Yeah. Welcome back to the CyberVault. I'm absolutely thrilled to bring Jen VanAntwerp with us here today. Jen is the founder of Sober in Cyber and is also on the marketing team for Strong DM. Now, Jen, why don't you introduce us to yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I have been in marketing for a little over 20 years, and I have been sober for 24 years. I've been in cybersecurity for about 6 or 7 years. Before that, I worked in healthcare, but I started my marketing career in automotive industry. The industries are different, but the networking events are almost all the same. And so that's part of what kind of inspired me to start Sober in Cyber. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Katie. I know it's a little bit of a different topic, so thank you so much for the opportunity.
No, absolutely, of course, and it's so great to have you here. Obviously, we had the opportunity to meet at a fantastic event at RSA. Speaking of which to be fair, was all oriented around coffee and healthy breakfast and snacks. So it was also like 10 a.m. So that's what you kind of expect. But obviously, we had the opportunity to get talking, and it was a really interesting thing, I suppose, to open the door to because I've kind of noticed that a lot of these events and a lot of events that you do, or depending kind of what you're working in within cybersecurity, is often driven around entertainment clients that you're taking out, you're wining, dining. But in addition to that, you're going somewhere like RSA, and it's a lot of cocktail nights, it's a lot of kind of I suppose oriented around more drinking, and it was really interesting to kind of dive into what you've been building here. So I think you're right, it's something a little bit different on this episode. So let's dig into maybe the foundations of how did you maybe kind of start Sober and Cyber, and obviously we probably already briefly touched on it there, but what was the inspiration? What kind of made you think that, hey, this is something that's maybe missing within this space?
Right. Yeah. It was something that I had always kind of daydreamed about because, like I mentioned, I've been sober for a long time, and I've also worked in marketing for a long time. I've attended a ton of different conferences. I've helped to host different events, and I've found different ways to navigate the events that do have alcohol. There are times when I just wouldn't go if I wasn't feeling, super strong within my sobriety. I would just opt out of those different events. But I would always daydream, like, how great would it be to have one of these events, because there's a lot of really beneficial things that happen in them. How great would it be to have one of these where there was literally zero pressure to drink? No pressure whatsoever because alcohol was not present. There were some events like that happening from time to time, but it really wasn't very prevalent in any of the industries that I'd worked in. Since I didn't really see something like that happening within the community, I decided, okay, I just need to maybe get off my butt and do this. And I felt like I was uniquely situated to be able to launch something like this because of my background in marketing. I've been a bit of a generalist in marketing, so I was able to get things up and running pretty quickly from the event management side, creating the website, newsletters, a little bit of everything is what I've had within my background and my experience. So I was able to really just kick things off pretty quickly. The response from the community has been overwhelmingly positive. It's been phenomenal. We've had a lot of folks, support the events, come attend the events. But honestly, that was really kind of what started it. I was a little bit sick of going to events and having to, you know, explain myself over and over again. I obviously wear it on my chest. I'm really open and honest about my sobriety and my journey, but not everyone is, nor should they have to be. It's not really anybody's business why somebody might not want to have a drink at an event. There really isn't as much pressure as there used to be, but it definitely still is there. And I wanted to create an environment and a space where people could enjoy all of the benefits, all of the career development opportunities that happen at these types of networking events without any of the pressure. So I started it in 2023 was when we had our very first launch event, and it was between Black Hat and DEF CON. And we're getting ready to have our third annual event at the same spot this year. So it's grown really rapidly. It's been phenomenal.
No, and I can only imagine because I mean conference season, it's busy, and I think kind of one thing that was really clear is while you're there, you're in this position where it's a long day. You're in meetings all day long. You're meeting, or whether you're on the sales floor, it doesn't really matter what your role is. It's crack of dawn till late at night, and then by the time you go to these events, it can kind of be a case that if you feel the need to have to kind of be surrounded by alcohol or whatever it may be, you're already probably a bit burnt out, and then it's the case that you've got to kind of get up and do it again tomorrow, and doing that with a hangover or whatever it may be, or the anxiety or whatever it could be is arguably, yeah, I mean, I suppose definitely makes it more challenging. So creating an environment where you don't necessarily have to do that, but can still get the benefits that you get from those networking opportunities is definitely valuable. And we kind of touched base on it there, but I really want to talk about the mission that you've got here. It sounds like, what it says on the tin, but in reality, there's so much that actually goes into this. We could talk about, oh, well, if you don't feel comfortable attending an event, then you are in this difficult position of, but I'm missing out on my networking opportunities. Or if you maybe feel limited in a role of, well, I want to do this with a client, but how do I do it if kind of the assumption is going to be we need to go out drinking or whatever again that could be. So talk to me a little bit more about the mission and what you actually do, and kind of, I suppose what it looks like to be kind of part of this initiative.
Yeah. Um, we have some compounding issues within the cybersecurity industry specifically. Because like I'd mentioned, I'd been in healthcare industry, I'd been in the automotive industry, and the networking events also kind of revolve around alcohol. But I feel like in security, the missions that we have are so critical. The things that we're protecting are so very important that there is a lot of pressure. There are a ton of stressors. And there are also a lot of folks, myself included, who, even though I'm an extrovert, I have a lot of social anxiety. And when you go to these events, for some folks, that might be maybe the first time they're attending an event this large, or, first time they've been to a conference, or they go to conferences all the time, but every single time it's just as difficult to be in those situations. So they might be turning towards alcohol to try to help, like, calm their nerves or, get up some courage. And if you're attending 3 or 4 different networking events each day, and you end up having even just one drink at each of those, by the end of the night, you could be, intoxicated and not even have any intention to do that. We're also not drinking nearly enough water at any of these events. So we are, we're stressed, we're a little anxious, we're dehydrated, we're not checking in with ourselves enough from a health perspective. And so it's just the snowball of all these different things. So my mission with Sober and Cyber is just to have a spot where people can, stay hydrated, have a really good time, but also still engage in all of that networking. But it's twofold, because another big part of it is just reducing the stigma. I find that by wearing shirts like this when I go to conferences, it's a conversation starter, and it's almost like it gives people permission to not have to have a drink either. They might have felt pressured otherwise, and they're like, no, this, sparkling water or this mocktail is delicious and refreshing, and they don't feel the need to really drink if other folks aren't doing it. So we're all about reducing the stigma, getting people talking about the subject, growing the community, and then just increasing the prevalence of alcohol-free options at events. Because we're a really creative community, and we come up with some of the coolest stuff I have ever seen. And so the fact that we've had sort of a carbon copy of the same types of networking events is just sad. There's so much more that we can do and that we're all starting to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you've been able to do in kind of arguably a short space of time as well, 3 years really isn't a long time period, but to be able to get integrated into kind of some of the largest conferences that are running across the US, and be able to get kind of, I suppose, like the following and the traction that you have with those events definitely goes to show that, hey, actually there is a demand for this. And it could be for a whole host of reasons. It could be a case of, well, I've been to multiple drinking events this week, and I would like the opportunity to not have that pressure.
Break.
Doing
Just a little break.
exactly. We all need a refresher every now and again, but it also is a case that it's, I suppose, that community element. We always talk about cybersecurity is a very community driven vertical to work in anyway. But then creating these little safe pockets for individuals is also pretty crucial, because I suppose the downside of being so community driven and close knit is that the pressure can feel more intense when you're buds kind of with everyone, and it's your mates that you're kind of there with. So I want to talk about how do people get involved, and that could be from a, hey, we would like to kind of co-host an event with you, or hey, we would like to, how can I come to your events, or hey, how can we just spread the mission, and how can we kind of I suppose get more people aware of it? What's kind of the best routes for people?
Well, for our in-person events, we host in-person events typically alongside some of the larger cybersecurity conferences. So for those in-person events, we actually have one coming up in August between Black Hat and DEF CON. We're always looking for people to just come and attend. You don't have to be sober or even alcohol-free to come to an event. Just come, see what it's like. We have a lot of folks who, like you were saying, especially during Hacker Summer Camp in Vegas, it is hot. It's a long week slash multiple weeks, depending on how many of the conferences and events you're going to. They might just want a break, a chance to hang out and visit where nobody's going to be pushing them to drink. So we want people to just come, see what the events are like. We're always open to having volunteers as well. You can help out at any of the in-person events, or we've got a host of other things that volunteers can assist with. On the website, we have a support squad section on the site where people can submit a form saying that they're interested in either, sponsoring an event, hosting an event, or volunteering with the sober and cyber community. Another way to get involved is if you are sober and alcohol free, we have a Discord server. And while our in-person events are open to everyone, I want anyone to be able to come to those. The Discord server I do reserve just for sober and alcohol-free people within our industry. That way we can share resources. We have the buddy system sometimes with conferences. So if we're not going to have a sober and cyber event at a conference, people can say, hey, I'm going to this conference. Who else is going from the community? That way, if I'm not, say I'm not really open about my sobriety, if I know that there's one other person there who understands me, has my back, we can kind of have the buddy system and help each other out if we're going to these events. Like, always make sure that you have a, sparkling water with lime in your hand. That's one of the little hacks, is to always make sure you have some kind of beverage in your hand. That way people, if they're just being polite, don't just bring you some other kind of a beverage. So you can come to our in-person events. You can sponsor an event, whether you're an individual or a corporation. You can volunteer. You can join the Discord community, and then just spread the word. You can follow us on social media. We have a newsletter that'll go out, so if you can subscribe on the website as well. So just spread the word that that we're here. If we're going to be at an event at a booth, just come and say hello. Get some stickers, some shiny stickers, some swag. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I feel like it's really vibrant merch, some of it as well. It's which is exactly as you say though, because I think it's that thing of, if you spot somebody wearing something, it's noticeable and you can kind of identify that. And especially if it's something that resonates with you, and obviously I think education is a huge piece around stuff like this, and you've already mentioned it, but it's getting rid of the stigma and recognizing that you don't always need an explanation behind it, but there's absolutely there's a lot of people out there that are probably in a similar boat, but just feel like they have to conform to fit kind of the expectations of, well, this is what the industry does, so I have to go with it. And I think it's an incredible initiative to kind of put out there, especially I think kind of the biggest impact being conference season, because I know so many people that are literally back to back from kind of pretty much from RSA all the way through to kind of the DEF CON Black Hat. That's a good few months of
A lot. It's a lot.
So much. I know. I just know how exhausted I was anyway. So and I only did a week. So
Yeah.
and so let's kind of explore then, Jen, because obviously 3 years you've already been able to build something pretty incredible. Like we've already said, there's been a lot of people who want to get involved, but what can we say the future is going to look like? Because I imagine there's probably only room for growth from here, but kind of what would you say, look, this is our journey, this is where we want to go, this is kind of where we want to take things?
Yeah. Most of the events that we've had so far have been within the United States. So I'd love to get to a point where we have enough like event organizers or conference organizers who are on board with the messaging and also volunteers to help support to where we could have more alcohol-free events, at multiple conferences all throughout the world. I think that would be phenomenal. I would also love to just have we've talked a bit with some other folks about having an actual conference focused on, mental health, mental wellness within the cybersecurity space. So maybe even starting with something virtual with that, and then at some point having a separate in-person conference, I think would be phenomenal because there are a lot of great organizations doing a lot of good work within that area in our community. There's still a big need. The stressors are still there and they're not going away. The attackers are still there and they're only getting stronger. So I think that the more we can help to center ourselves and find different ways to connect with each other human to human, that's only going to improve. So just I guess increasing the footprint of the events that we have nationwide and to get more event organizers, whether they're going to have a sober and cyber event or not, just thinking about weaving in different options during the planning stage of their event. Just thinking of different ways to make their events more inclusive to people who, might not drink. Seeing more of that in the community would just be phenomenal.
Yeah, for sure. And I think kind of, there's it's like you say, you've been able to kind of tap up a lot of like North America and things, but there's so many conferences that are happening in Europe, even the UK specifically. But also we kind of briefly touched base, but it's obviously it's prevalent in the conferences. But even when you take that outside of it, we've spoken before about actually what are the pressures if you're working in a client facing role and you're in this position of the expectation is that you're meeting with clients and you're taking them out, and what if kind of everybody at that table they're expecting, oh, we're going to go for some drinks or whatever it may be. How do you how do you kind of navigate that? And I suppose when you've got a community around you that either have been in the same situation and can offer advice, and I think the impact can go so far beyond purely what happens at conferences. Because it is a high. I don't think it really matters where you work in security. It's so stressful, and people often forget that it's you're dealing with criminals. You're trying to defend and protect kind of day-to-day individuals from people that really want to take advantage of whether it's their finances or their personal data and stuff. Like when you strip it back, it's pretty intense, right?
It is. It is. It's interesting. One of the things you mentioned was folks in client facing roles. And I think folks in sales, sales departments, it has been a struggle, I'd imagine, to try to navigate that and find different ways to still be included in those conversations. But one of the things that I'll advise people is just be open, be honest, because I've been at dinner events before where they'll start the ordering, maybe with me or near my side of the table. And once you order an alcohol-free beverage or a mocktail or cocktail, there are a lot of people who kind of follow suit once they realize like, oh, I didn't even see that on the menu. I'd love to have that because maybe they're driving back home after a roundtable event and, otherwise wouldn't have even thought about that being an option. So I really have started to feel things shifting, tides shifting a bit to where when I first got sober over 20 years ago, when I would tell people, "Oh yeah, I don't drink at all," they'd usually respond with, "Oh, I'm so sorry." That was originally like, which was like I thought that was just kind of funny, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And nowadays, when I tell people that, they say, "Oh, that's really cool." And so that I feel like that started maybe 3 to 4 years ago. I think during COVID, during all the lockdowns, that was a breaking point for a lot of people, and I'm gonna try really hard not to cry, because for folks who, there are a lot of people who got sober during that time period because they hit their breaking point, or a lot of people who had been sober up until that point, and it was a struggle getting through that spot. So it feels like after that, people have been more open and honest with the struggles and the things that they're going through. Even though I have 24 years of sobriety under my belt, I still try to talk about, today was a hard day. This is a challenge. It was hard getting through this because I want people to realize that, it's not like you get sober and everything else in the world is perfect. life is still gonna life. Things are still happening that are beyond your control, and you can get through that. You can absolutely get through that without, picking up whatever your poison of choice was. So, that's kind of some of the messages that I try to bring out there too is, um, you know, despite all the different struggles, you can make a healthier choice, whatever that might look like for you. And maybe that's like taking a few minutes to meditate at the beginning of every day when you're at a conference, just centering yourself, or taking some time at the end of each night to really check in and say, like, okay, did I drink enough water? Do I need to stay out that late again? I usually stay out later than even my counterparts who drink because I'm like, whoo, yes, let's do karaoke at 2. Let's do it. I'm ready. But yeah, just whatever those healthier choices look like for you.
Yeah. And again, I think that circles around to the more I think sometimes when something feels like it's a taboo subject or that feels like there's going to be judgment or prejudice, people are less likely to talk about it through that fear. But actually, in reality, it's the talking about it that takes away the stigma and the stereotypes and whatever it may be, because then you realize that actually most people have these feelings, most people go through this, and maybe people don't always, people have reasons they want to be sober, but maybe sometimes people just want to reduce their drinking and reduce the pressure around it. Everybody's got a different journey, but if you're open and you talk about it, obviously then there's that's really where the big impact comes in. And it's also a really positive thing to hear how mindsets are shifting,
Yeah.
because that's, that again, I think that is what that's what we want to see. And like I think, yeah, it takes off that pressure and it allows people to recognize that they're going to be accepted, especially when it comes to such an intense kind of industry, but also, like we say, the intense environments that you're often kind of subjected to in these roles. So what I'd really love to close out on with, Jen, because I think, we've talked about some kind of what you guys are doing, and I think this has just been a really great opportunity for people to take the opportunity after this to go away and research a bit more and get involved. And like you say, even if you aren't sober and that's not necessarily something you're even kind of considering, but maybe go to an event, learn what it's about, and learn that actually these can be just as valuable.
And so
Because,
much fun.
yeah,
I'm a little extra myself, if you can't tell from my rainbow attire, but I try to make the events. I try to have fun activations and really, like, surprising awesome things so that, I think a lot of people have been to, like, dry weddings before, and they're like, "Oh god, what's a dry networking event even like? That sounds horrible." I try to make them so much fun that people realize, like, you can have conversations that are oftentimes even more engaging, and you remember them in those types of environments rather than trying to shout at each other across a, cramped bar, a super cramped bar. So yeah.
yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think kind of everything that you tied up there, I think this is why people should at least, like we say, attend, get involved. So, we've briefly touched base. You've got something in August, with kind of DEFCON kind of black hat side of things. But what's on, like, and we've looked at that long term, but what's next kind of immediately? Because we conference season is like we're in the midst of it right now. It's chaotic, it's all over. So how can, firstly, kind of, what do you have going on, and secondly, how can people stay connected with what you're doing and make sure that if there's an event that they're going to be there for, that they can absolutely get involved?
Yeah. So on our website, soberandcyber.org, we have an event section. Our next upcoming event actually is next week. So I'm going to be at the Identiverse conference in Las Vegas, June 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We're going to have a booth there. So come say hello at the booth. I'll get you some stickers and some swag. We're partnered with Cyber Risk Alliance. So at any of their networking events or welcome events, we have some mocktails, some sober and cyber mocktails that are going to be at those events. So we're really grateful for our partnership with Cyber Risk Alliance, because that's really helped to spread awareness about the nonprofit. And then after that, towards the end of June, we're going to be at Co-op Cyber Tech, and that one's in Denver, Colorado. So I'll also have a booth there, and we're helping out with they're going to have some pretty fun, like lock picking and other types of events there at Co-op Cyber Tech. So definitely check that one out. And then our next big event, like I mentioned, is August 6th, and that's the Sober Speakeasy. and that one takes place between Black Hat and DEF CON. So it's at the Mob Museum. This is the third year that we've had it at that venue, and it is such a cool event. We buy out the whole underground speakeasy area of the Mob Museum, and we have phenomenal mocktails that the bartenders there help to put together, really, really good food. And then up until the museum closes until 9, anyone who attends our event gets to tour the museum for free. And it's a really fun part of the Mob Museum is just a very unique spot. And it's sort of in between where Black Hat and DEF CON physically take place. It's in the downtown Vegas area. So that's going to be our next big event. The registration's open on the website. It's also available for sponsorships as well. So companies, individuals, come check that out.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I mean, that sounds great fun. I mean, we're going to be there as well. So that catch us going round. But no, Jem, well, honestly, this has been a great episode. I think, like I say, something slightly different to the norm, but something that I think is definitely important to bring awareness around and let people know is out there. And as you've mentioned, I highly recommend kind of connect and also get on your website, kind of attended a newsletter, because even if it doesn't affect yourself personally, it also might affect people that you work with, and letting them know that you're keen to be involved with stuff like this holds a hell of a lot of power. So definitely recommend. But Jen, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure having you on today.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you in August.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.